My name is Sarah, and this is History and Histrionics, where I'm obsessed with dead people, and we discuss events and times that have nothing to do with me. Today we're going to talk about the Dancing Plague. The Dancing Plague took place in the year of 1518. So let me take you back. It's July in the year of 1518, in a village called Strasbourg-Alsace, which is a free city within the Holy Roman Empire, and they're in the midst of some hard times. The French region has been hit particularly hard by famine and disease. The people of the town have faced difficulties over the past year or two, and they're having trouble keeping their families fed, and they've come pretty close to starvation if they haven't witnessed their neighbors die of starvation already. To add insult to injury, this is a particularly sweltering hot summer for them. So they're hot, they're hungry, they're thirsty, and they're exhausted. The poor townsfolk of this area are just doing the best they can to survive. On this particularly hot day, Frau Trofeo steps wearily out of her house and into the dry and dusty streets of her city. She moves uncomfortably in her scratchy, threadbare shift dress, and she feels beads of sweat begin to drip down her back and form on her forehead. It's not even midday, and the sun is already sweltering. As she prepares to start her morning chores, she begins to twitch. She feels it start in her shoulder. She involuntarily begins to sway and shimmy. She glides her feet across the rough streets and waves her arms in a jerky and sporadic motion. Frau Trofeo begins to sweat profusely now as she begins to jig and twirl down the street. Her mouth quickly gets more and more dry. Townspeople stop and stare in confusion. Her husband comes out and demands that she cease, but she seems unable to stop. She begins to panic and beg for help, because try as she might, she legitimately cannot stop this strange and spastic dance. Over the next few days, 24 to 30 people would join Frau Trofeo in her endless dance, also seemingly unable to stop. For hours and days, people danced uncontrollably, their feet becoming bruised and bloody. They danced until they collapsed from dehydration and exhaustion, and then family members would drag them home and put them in their beds, hoping and praying that they would cease. But when they woke up, the dance of death started all over again. What I've just described is actual events that took place. It would become known as the Dancing Plague of 1518. And between July and September of that year, an estimate of between 50 to 400 people became afflicted with the uncontrollable need to dance in a spastic and convulsive way. Several would end up dying from exhaustion and dehydration. Clergies and physicians within the town were stumped. Some townsfolk attempted to join them in their dance, and officials hired musicians as well as professional guild hall performers, hoping they would help quell the need to dance, but it was of no use. There were rumors of cult activity and witchcraft among the unafflicted locals. Officials began carting victims of the dancing plague to the church in order to beg forgiveness, believing Saint Vitus, who is the patron saint of dancing and those who have epilepsy, had cursed the town to dance until they were dead. In September, as quickly as it started, it stopped. Life went back to normal, leaving those who had witnessed the event to speculate the cause for hundreds of years to come. You might be surprised to know that this is not the first case of compulsive and frenzied dancing to break out. All along the Rhine region between the 10th and the 16th century, several pockets of what became known as the Dancing Plague would break out and stop just as suddenly as it started. Modern speculation first theorized that perhaps a bad harvest had led to the common grain mold known as ergot, which when ingested causes hallucinations and spastic movements. This seems to be the most widely believed explanation of the bizarre behavior for quite a while. However, if you are to dig just a little bit deeper, This doesn't really explain the phenomena happening all over different pockets of the region over hundreds of years. And it also doesn't explain, in particular, why it would happen in Strasbourg, Alsace, when they were suffering from a 2-year-long famine and didn't really have very much grain. Which leads to another more plausible theory by medical historian John Waller, who theorized that this is an early case of what's known as psychogenic disorder. He speculated that it represents an early instance of stress-induced mass hysteria, or some sort of psychosis. According to this theory, contagious social behaviors might erupt spontaneously as a way to cope and respond to particularly stressful events, such as plague, flood, starvation, and other disaster. And this would make sense when you look at the area of Strasbourg, Alsace at the time. They were suffering from record numbers of smallpox cases, as well as starvation due to that famine. And when looking at other similar cases of the dancing plague, most notably 1374, the strange phenomenon seemed to occur in the midst or at the end of an extreme famine or illness epidemics. Many historians believe that psychogenic disorder may also explain the Salem witch trials, which many of us are very familiar with, as well as some modern-day hysterias, such as the 1962 laughing epidemic, which took place in Africa right after they had won their freedom from years of war. So what do you think caused the outbreak of the dancing plague? Do you think it was ergot? Were all of these people just tripping on the early forms of LSD? Or do you think it was mass hysteria suffered by a people who were religious and highly superstitious, and this is their outlet, and this is how it came out? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and remember to do the likey, subscribey things, and hit the notification bell if you'd like to see some more historical weirdness. Bye guys.